Welcome, guys. Welcome, welcome. George, Adrian, Pamela, Marcy, everyone, Patrick. You guys are all flooding in. Hello. We're going to give it about 30 seconds so everybody can come into this webinar. I see the number slowly going up, so we'll give you guys a few seconds. Awesome. Okay, guys, I see the number kind of stopping right now. I know a few of you guys may be coming in. It's only 2:31, but I definitely want to go ahead and start kickstarting all of this. My name is Ariel Rafua. I work with the Greater Dallas Restaurant Association, and I want to welcome you guys into the TRA Marketplace 2020 virtual online version. So thank you guys for being here. Today's session is called Consumer Insights from Coca-Cola. So you guys get to hear from one of the most, name brands, which is Coca-Cola. It's a treat for you guys. And this stage is called Silicon Hills, and we are sponsored by Coca-Cola. So thank you guys to Coca-Cola, Topo Chico, all the brands. Thank you guys for sponsoring this stage. We do have a quick video for you guys.
We at the Coca-Cola Company believe the health of our water sources is essential to the health of our communities, which is why we're helping to replenish the mighty Rio Grande, as well as over 30 watersheds across the country. We're also leading water projects in more than 100 communities. And for every drop we use, we're working to give one back, because our products rely on the same thing as we all do: clean water. And we care about it like our business depends on it.
Love that video.
Guys, you have to go grab a Coca-Cola or Topo Chico from your fridge if you have one. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce to you guys our speaker, who's Larry Freeman, who leads guest insights and analytics for Coca-Cola. Thank you so much, Larry.
All right. Thank you, Ariel. Have a good one. I'll see you at the end. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. I'm going to share my screen, so just bear with me for 1 second. Okay, I think I'm sharing. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today, and thank you, Ariel and team, for inviting me to this session. I am really happy to join here today and tell you some of the new and interesting things that are coming out and insights from the Coca-Cola Company related to the food service landscape. One of the more enviable things to do in the insights field and positions to have is position and insights at Coca-Cola, because we have such a wealth of information about the marketplaces in which we participate. And I would say the most enviable position in insights is working with our food service customers. And that's because we get to identify opportunities with Coke in its most influential and special occasion, that is with a meal. And what we've had at our disposal at Coca-Cola is a long-standing commitment to bring best-in-class insights to our customers and potential customers to help them grow and help us grow together. And one of the key things we have is at our disposal is a huge wealth of data around the food service landscape that allows us to do things that we have never been able to do before. And I dare say most of the landscape has a rare opportunity to do and take a fresh look at the food service landscape. And so what I'm going to do today is talk about some exciting new work that we're doing to understand the unique occasions within food service, how those are evolving due to COVID, and how they're likely to continue to evolve as we move into this period of recovery and hopefully a prosperous recovery that leads to a new normal that is prosperous for all of us. So a few things we're going to go over today. First, one, I'm going to give you a backstory. It takes a little bit of explaining to understand how we've emerged and understood how we can use data to identify a unique lens into the food service landscape. We've been very simplistic in our understanding of the unique occasions in the food service landscape, and with our wealth of insights, we're able to move further and give a more nuanced view of that. So I want to give you a backstory on how we've done that and where we're likely to go with it. And then, because we're in such a unique time in all of our lives, and especially in the food service industry, we have to to pay some attention and some time to the unique way in which coronavirus is shifting the landscape, and how this new view of food service growth avenues, as we call them, are changing due to the impact of coronavirus. And then next, we're going to take a step into the future. We're going to talk about the next level. Where do we go from here? Where have we come from? Where are we now? And then where will we see food service growth avenues evolve over the next 18 to 24 months? And last, and I say bonus content here because I have so much to share, I'm not sure if we'll have time to get to it. I'll give you some examples and ideas of how you can optimize your opportunity within each one of these dining occasions to better impact your diners and hopefully achieve growth. So if we can, we'll get to that. If not, reach out to your Coca-Cola partners within the marketing community at Coca-Cola and your sales contacts, and they will put you in place to be able to get this last section if we're not able to cover it. All right, so off we go. We're going to hold, again, as Ariel said, questions to the end. Please feed them through as they come up. I won't be able to see them right away, but Ariel will pop in at the end and we'll be able to cover those off as much as possible. So the backstory. We found, as we delved deep into the food service landscape, a unique opportunity to go further, to unfurl the food service landscape into a more nuanced view of unique diner choices. And it's good to start this conversation with an understanding of where we're coming from. Because as we took a step into the deep wealth of data that we had at our disposal, we found that primarily the way we were talking with customers and partners in the food service landscape, and the way our partners were talking about unique occasions was pretty simplistic. Primarily just thinking about service mode. Is it dine-in? Is it drive-through? Is it takeout? These are certainly unique occasions, but are they the most unique? If we let data tell us where the food service landscape should be segmented, what will we come up with? And the future got us to a point where we are much more nuanced, a multi-dimensional view of food service landscape that really divides visitation into more descriptive growth avenues, as we like to call them, that are easily grasped, they're contextual in nature, and they help us better optimize the experience and the opportunity with our diners and guests. And when we took a deeper look at the data, what we found is that we needed to expand the types of information that we're using to segment diner occasions from what was typically just looking at what type of meal it was, or the meal type or time of day, and perhaps the service mode or how they are getting the beverage, to a more nuanced set of factors. And part of those nuanced set of factors was a deeper look into service modes themselves. Instead of just looking at dine-in, we need to look at dine-in that was using wait service or was using some type of digital ordering capacity. And the same is true of all of the other service modes. It's not just takeout as a gigantic bubble. Its takeout is much more nuanced. It's by time of day. It's by it's by the type of ordering method, the amount of time ahead of ordering, etc., that we need to take into account. And we need to take into account things like the channel itself. It turns out that the channel itself has a dramatic influence. The channel of consideration has a dramatic influence on what diners are choosing and the unique occasions that they're dining in. Secondly, who they're with. The companion segment and the context around your visitation was extremely enhanced and differentiated by whether or not it was alone, it was with a family member, with a couple, it was with friends or coworkers. All that detail provides a unique experience and a unique set of criteria that shift dining behavior. And lastly, the amount of time of planning before the visit has a dramatic impact on the types of channels, the types of choices, and what diners are going to do on that visit. And by using these 5 factors together, we did achieve our goal of making purposeful data connections to understand unique new occasions and growth avenues that we can lean into to better service our guest needs and to find opportunities to grow. And we found these big 8 corridors that you see in front of us that represent the dining landscape and unique dining choices. But this 8 big corridors are not the level that are going to reveal the real meat and special sauce that we need to lean into. It's taking a deeper look underneath each of these to reveal some of the unique occasions that are much more granular and much more much more targeted to how we can service dining needs. Now you can see here that meal type has a dramatic impact on the growth avenues, and it helps us understand when that visit will happen. But the other 4 factors help shape where that dining occasion will happen and how we can optimize the visit. And you can see these percentages side here show us the share of the dining landscape that each one of the growth avenues had prior to COVID. So this was as of March of 2020, before we were all disrupted by the onset of the pandemic. So now that we know where we were starting from and what growth avenues are, I want to take a step back. I want to talk a little bit about how coronavirus has changed the landscape, what impact it has had at a macro level, and how that's manifested itself in these growth avenues and shifted the occasions. So newly released data from Crest tells us that double-digit losses in sales across the industry were primarily driven by a dramatic dip in traffic. Some of that was also due to average check, according to MPD Crest, but a gigantic shift downward in the amount of people that were dining out for obvious reasons. And we did see over time, as we progressed throughout the quarter, a slight rebound. It began slowly in the beginnings of April and accelerated as we went through May and June. But the interesting thing is, as we look beyond Q2, we see a flattening of that trend. The improvement slowed at the end of June and has not yet picked back up. We saw, for instance, that over just the month of May, casual dining went from a negative 61 year-over-year change all the way up to 19%, but it stopped right there. Much of that change, as we found out, was due to openings of dine-in locations, the optimization of off-premise opportunities. But what we're seeing is a flattening now because for whatever reason, whether or not it's the rate of reinfection, whether or not this is the current ceiling of people that are willing to go back out, that we're not seeing the type of improvement that we witnessed all the way up through the end of June continue into July. Now we saw that traffic shift of about negative 21% from Crest, but that traffic erosion was not evenly dispersed across the different unique food service occasions. What really happened was that some occasions lost much more than others. And there were, in fact, some occasions that actually reversed that trend to a degree, although not enough to completely mitigate the outflow of traffic. There were some increases in share of traffic for occasions like family takeout lunch or pre-order and delivery dinner. But when we look at the trends across those and look at the share of traffic, what we see is that the largest share gain for really concentrated around opportunities that were heavily off-premise, allowed people to mitigate their exposure, and to utilize things like technology to better service their needs. And the areas that had the largest share losses were areas that were really affected by a confluence of factors. One, the reliance on dine-in traffic, but also the reliance on traffic related to work or people that of an older age bracket that were heavily influenced by the possible threat of coronavirus that they were to catch it. And you can start to glean some of the themes around here. But what we see is that consumers are really choosing occasions that align with their daily life. Daily life in terms of the way in which we're currently working, the way in which we are schooling our children, and the way in which we are mitigating our exposure to the outside world. And as we've gained Q2 data, there are a couple new trends that are emerging that help us see the new priorities that are emerging for consumers around those new routines. Now, I'm going to talk through each of these in a bit more detail and give you a sense of how this is shifting, what the data is saying that led us to these conclusions, and give an example of how some of our customers and partners throughout the industry are adapting to this shift in theme. So let's start with the first, which is how people are really taking a break in order to get away from what is really our entire lives packed under one roof. We have our home, our leisure, our school, our workouts. Every piece of our lives has been combined to the confines of our house for the most part, and that is getting old. It feels like Groundhog Day, as many say. And what is happening towards the end of Q2 is that people are really shifting the way in which they see food service occasions. It's less about taking the option that's most convenient, that's on the way to somewhere, that's going to save you time. Really what we're seeing is a downward shift in things like convenience and saving time, and an upward shift in areas like, I need to take a break from my house. And that manifests in a few different ways. You can see in terms of the distance traveled to visit, there's a dramatic shift downward in people saying that, you know, that visit was something that was on the way somewhere else, primarily work or school or some other engagement, or home from work or school. And people are traveling further. They're willing to go out of their way to have a unique experience, to take a break from the house, because it is a dining occasion, even if it isn't off premise, just to pick up something and come home, is a chance for us to take a break of the monotony of our daily lives. And one of the things that we're seeing here is that DoorDash, for instance, is noticing this just in the way they are participating in the food service visits, and they're enticing diners to get out and pick up their order for a 30% coupon. And we're seeing other areas like Domino's, who's welcoming consumers by their name as they enter through the new Pie Pass that lets them carry out customers check in on online and in-app as they arrive in the parking lot. So it gives the employees the ability to know, hey, we have a special customer come up here. They head out, they greet them by name, thank them for their visit, and allow them to take that break and have it with a special personal touch. Another key trend that we're seeing is that the hunger for dining out is really overshadowing dining in, because we are so stuck to that one place. And for a long period of time, especially at the beginning, if you remember, if you were anything like me, we were actually very happy and trying to cook as much as we could at home. And as time wore on, I really am getting sick of cooking my own meals and having the same things that I'm not good at cooking from day on day. And what we're seeing in the data is that diners are saying on average that this year we have much fewer people saying that they would rather cook at home than eat out at a restaurant. That's dropped by 9% compared to last year. And 33% are looking to dine out as a form of entertainment. So we miss that aspect of human interaction and entertainment that we had prior to this. As I say, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and that's certainly here in terms of the way in which we're looking at food service visitation. Cravings and wanting to connect to the real thing is also something that's getting people out of the door, right? There are only some meals that you can get out of the home unless you're a professional cook, and even then, there's nothing quite like having a burger at Whataburger, or having a Coke from a fountain from your favorite restaurant. And that's something we really need to lean into. People really want to indulge and treat themselves. This is the ability to take that break again. So one of the people we're seeing doing that quite well, and Sonic has just been doing great compared to most of the food service locations, in part because of their ability to capitalize on off-premise occasions as through their drive-in setup, but also because it's a unique experience. You can only get that Sonic slushie at that location, and people are willing to drive out of the way to get there. And they're leaning into this even more by by increasing the number of drive-in spots. They're also placing tables in between those areas to allow people to socially distance and interact with one another. And some are even having large outdoor space with lawn games and picnic tables, etc., that allow people to stay away from one another at a reasonable distance, but still have an enjoyable and entertaining experience. And the other thing that we're seeing is that value is really transforming during this period. And what we're seeing is that there are really two camps of outlook on value. There's one camp that's really leaning in on the ability to save a dime because there's a lot of uncertainty in our lives in terms of not just the virus, but also whether or not we will have a job. And there are other people that are putting a unique value on the opportunity to have a unique experience, and that outweighs just price for those people. And this is manifesting in data in a few ways. One, diners are increasingly taking advantage of cost-saving options. There's no question in which dealing has increased. That we see that in terms of couponing, value meal redemptions, and in the way in which they're fulfilling on these coupons and values is unique too, in which 38% used a coupon that was on their smartphone, way up from the prior year. But there's also, again, that emerging group that's fixating more on the happiness than on the price when they're selecting restaurants. It's really, they're putting the value of that unique experience above just the price. And you see that in some of the data as well, in which people that are choosing restaurants, those that are saying that they're choosing it based on it being the most inexpensive, is flat year over year. So that is not absolutely increasing. It's not just about value for everybody. It's also about the value of the experience. So we see Cracker Barrel, for instance, acting on this, in which they're making ordering from for the whole family affordable through their half-off family meals when you order through DoorDash. And this is just one example of a group that's doing that, but trying to make an accessible option available to people is really key during this time, and coupling that with what we're seeing in the next trend, the shift towards larger party types. And right, so buying food for the office, again, is much different than it was 6 to 8 months ago. It's not just me buying for myself. I'm stuck at home, and we're with our whole family stuck in the same house, and our days are increasingly crammed between doing this and trying to keep the kids occupied and trying to juggle household chores. So ordering food for lunch is a family meal and a work meal all in one. And we're seeing that in the data too. So working from home has resulted in less visits like on-the-go breakfast or lunch alone, or getting something as a snack from work. And we're seeing more family lunches and dinners. So we see the average party size increasing by 7%. We also see the growth avenues of family takeout lunch increasing by over 10% year over year. And to accommodate this new larger party size, restaurants are increasingly offering family and combo meals, like we saw with Cracker Barrel in the previous one. But what I think is a really unique option here, and somebody who's adapting to this, is sweet cream. Sweet cream, as previous, was really an on-the-go lunch work time lunch option for their core clientele. But they've had to adapt because they don't have people going into the office as much. So what they're doing instead is they're offering a twist on this. Instead of offering their previous cold offerings, they're switching to heartier and full meals, including sides and entrees for the entire family. So there's a great way in which a concept is shifting not just the size and the occasion, but the menu to fit that occasion, to optimize for the opportunity that is available to them. And the third thing is technology. Technology has been increasing year over year. in terms of food service. There's been expanding availability of things like pre-order digital, tablet, etc. But one of the key things that we'd seen prior to COVID is that there was a bastion of people that resisted, and primarily because their age and uncomfortability with doing something new and with technology in general kept this option at bay for them. But because of disruption from COVID and the need to limit contact with others as much as possible and mitigate your possible risk, we're seeing that barrier is being removed for this older group. They're coming more and more comfortable. So the adult diners 65 plus are seeing a plus 400% year over year rate of digital restaurant ordering in our data. And compared to the same time last year, we're also seeing things like the perceptions that people are comfortable through comfortable ordering through mobile pay is increasing. Utilization of dine-in digital tablet ordering, takeout, mobile app ordering, and delivery mobile app ordering are all year over year much higher than before. And we saw that in general with a wide scale shift to delivery year over year. But as comfort arises, so do expectations. And we're seeing a bit of slipping back from the share of visitation going to delivery to things like takeout because of those expectations. As more and more people experience some of the pitfalls of delivery and don't have the right order fulfillment, or the food doesn't come the right way, it represents a threat. And that's something that we need to continue to elevate and adopt and adapt to as time goes on and consumers' experience with digital emergence and it continues to mature. So one of the things that somebody's doing really well is Shake Shack is embracing the mobile ordering pay technology and third-party delivery all at once. And what they're doing is setting up new outlets, their new outlets with drive-in and pickup locations devoted to each of these to make sure you're not getting caught behind your third-party delivery person when you're trying to make a curbside pickup. And the same is true for curbside pickup, app pickups, and third-party delivery lines have their own dedicated lane so that they can make things as efficient and comfortable as possible for all the different types of diners and diner fulfillers. So those are some unique things that we're seeing right now in the heat and really what is the eye of the storm of coronavirus still, is that people are emerging very different perceptions of what they value and very different outlook on how they see food service visitation. But that will continue to evolve. And what we've been able to do is take a step from our present view and try to put on our future glasses and look into the recent future to understand where we expect diner visitation to evolve. And we're doing this by understanding some of the macro influencers that are influencing visitation. And I spoke to this earlier when we were looking at how food service visitation was shifting along each of the growth avenues. But what we found is that when we look at the data, the things that are most predictive of shifting behavior between the food service occasions, the growth avenues, are three things. One is if an occasion has heavy reliance on dine-in, we know that right now it is a big predictor of whether or not that occasion is going to show greater erosion. The second one is if the occasion has heavy reliance on work-related traffic, so people navigating to work, taking a break from work for lunch or a snack, or if it's an occasion that relies heavily on people coming from work and picking something up on the way home, that will also be has been a huge influence on occasions that have seen a much greater adverse impact. And lastly is the diners 65 plus, those older diners, the at-risk diners, that really have to mitigate their exposure as much as possible because of the severe consequences that they might face, are staying away. And those three factors together represent a composite score that helps us predict where visitation has gone over the last 3 months and what we're likely to see in the future. And so what we're able to do is we expect the marketplace to continue to shift until we see some consistent signs of recovery and we feel comfortable in that new normal. In the shift, we'll have different phases. We've already gone through the crisis. Eventually, we will be at a point where we're gaining a real sustainable momentum. And hopefully, in the not too distant future, we'll reach a period where the impact of the severe threat of coronavirus is behind us, and we're in what has been called the new normal. We are somewhere in between crisis and momentum, and I'm not here to predict which exact point of the curve we are on right now, but we're not quite yet to the new normal, but we need to plan for it as much as possible now. Now, our road to that new normal can have very different trajectories. We might shift back into a period of crisis depending on the impact of the virus. We could accelerate momentum if treatments and cures are developed quicker than we see now. But at some point, we will be at the new normal. And that new normal will look somewhat similar to pre-COVID, but probably fundamentally different and in ways that we don't expect. So what we want to do is use our, our three factors that affect whether or not we are going to see a shift in visitation to each one of the growth avenues to predict where that and what the new normal will look like. So we're going to do that with two scenarios. We think these are two of the more likely options for what could influence what the new normal looks like. And let's call the new normal now the balance of 2021. And the first one being a new normal that looks like dine-in comeback is being delayed. So people in this scenario are largely back to working in their offices. They are going back to school regularly. We are able to move about their daily lives for the most part, but because of the unique impact of dining in at restaurants and the potential impact that can have for contracting coronavirus, that dine-in is somewhat delayed. And that's delayed for a couple reasons. Again, because dine-in has a unique impact in terms of possible exposure to coronavirus, but also because we've learned over this period of time that we can fulfill a lot of our needs and prior needs with off-premise occasions, and some people might even prefer that. And the second scenario, which is a little bit scary, is that we have a prolonged impact of coronavirus in which we don't have the adequate treatments throughout the balance of 2021. And because of that, not only is dine-in going to remain low, but much of the workforce will still remain at home. Some of those being at home because they no longer have a position, and some because their companies are choosing to reduce the exposure to their workforce. And because of that, people are not back at work. And each of these two occasions and these two scenarios have a variety of very different impact and implications for the food service landscape, depending on those scenarios play out. So this chart is a bit of an eye chart. So I'm going to walk you through this with a couple of builds. And this, what we're looking at now, is the food service landscape and the share of occasions related to each one of the growth avenue occasions prior to COVID. You see that a great number of visits were concentrated in the lunch alone, that work-related visitation, and in the retail drink. And what we see in the scenario one, that's the scenario where dine-in is delayed, but people are back at work, we see a shift. What we're seeing is that lunch alone actually comes back quite a bit. We're going to get a bit more concentration in those occasions. We're also going to maintain some of the higher levels of family takeout lunch that we're seeing prior to COVID. And some of the other off-premise occasions like takeout and delivery dinner. But in the more severe occasion in which both dine-in and the workforce delayed, we see a much different picture. And if we look at the differentiation between those two scenarios, there's a big gap in between where we should put our attention. So each one of these has a unique set of implications and watch outs and winners and losers from an occasion standpoint that we need to pay attention to. So I'm going to talk through some of those implications and winners and losers here. So the dine-in comeback being delayed scenario number one, there is some likelihood that this is going to be the case, because what we're seeing right now is both in the July data that we have to date and data up through June is that dine-in is kind of peaked back to a level of about 40%, but has remained flat from there. And even in areas like open table reservations and other indicators, we see that there's a flattening, in some cases a negative trend in the amount of dine-in indicators. So this is a highly likely scenario that we need to pay attention to. And if this scenario comes true, what we see is that a certain number of occasions that are primarily related to off-premise options are going to be big winners. One of them is going to be an occasion that looked very similar to something that took up a big place in the pre-COVID world, which is lunch alone. We have to remember that consumer behavior in those occasions might be fundamentally different. Even though I'm having a lunch alone visit from work, I might not be having it in the same place, right? Because office areas are going to have additional restrictions. You might be confined to your office for long periods of time. And when you go out to get lunch, you don't want to come back and eat that lunch at the place that you're stuck in all day. Maybe you want to go out and go to a park, eat the lunch in your car or in some other socially distant appropriate area to take a break from work. So just as a footnote, that we should really think about even some of these occasions that look similar to a pre-COVID world are probably going to be fundamentally different from what we see now. So some of the implications. So one, growth avenues with exposure to off-premise will continue to command really the lion's share of positive gains, similar to what we're seeing right now. And similarly, those that are adjacent to work regain some share return to as we return to the workday. But because of its reliance on dine-in, the FSR segment is really going to still have significant risk due to their reliance on dine-in growth avenues. So it's key for us to optimize off-premise capabilities, even in this scenario where people are back to work, by giving diners the opportunities to redefine their daily routines, and that'll be really key for us at establishing growth. So really leaning back into some of those key trends that we were looking at in the previous section. In the second, more severe scenario, there is some indication that workforce is going to still remain low in 2021, partly because so many people are still out of work. The unemployment rate has dropped, but is still at around 10%. And even if people do go back to work, there are some companies that say that there are some companies that believe that a significant portion of their workforce can work just fine from home. And to save money on real estate expenses, they might choose to keep them working from home, even if COVID is completely gone. So what does this world look like? In this world, what we see is one, breakfast growth avenues and breakfast-related occasions are going to be severely struggling. And that's due to the fewer number of trips that are coming from work commutes. So each one of those will have a relatively small impact, but as you aggregate them all together, they become a huge share of the marketplace that's going to shift to another occasion. Similarly, influenced by work traffic or retail, drink, and lunch alone, that'll be much lower than what we see in the previous scenario. So growth avenues commonly associated with family meals will benefit, again, because we're working from home. We have that family workday break. We have that dinner at home with the whole group. And retail, because she a share drop that's very similar to breakfast due to the high unemployment numbers that may persist. So outlets should really focus on streamlining their off-premise operations again. So quick to-go offerings, creative family-focused meals and promos, and areas that really focus on value and uniqueness. So that's the world of coronavirus as we see it prior to COVID, and as we move into the post-COVID landscape. And I think we are getting pretty close to a time where we can manageably able to get through what it was our bonus section. So I'm going to press on here, but if we don't get through all of this as we get closer to our 4:30 deadline, that will be fine. We will follow back up when we can. So this last section is really helping us understand where we need to place our focus. We know some of that based on the trajectory of the marketplace that we just revealed, but even in a normal period, there's a way in which we can optimize the way in which we execute in each one of these occasions. And one of the interesting things that we found as we were going through the development of growth avenues is that we were looking at an ability to take this to the next step and identify what are the key drivers of visitation. Is that no duh, greater satisfaction has an intrinsic link to increased visitation. So if you make people more satisfied with that visit, that satisfaction will be paid in kind by them coming back to you more and more often. There's a strong circular relationship between satisfaction and increased visitation that we can model against. We're able to take that step to say, if you increase satisfaction within each one of these occasions by X%, what will be the likely impact on your visitation in the next year? And we did this not just in mass, but we also took the next step of going below that and saying, right, this is your payout if you go after satisfaction in this particular occasion, but how do we get there? And we get there by focusing on different paths to driving satisfaction. We understand satisfaction isn't just comprised of one thing. It's comprised of a confluence of different levers, ranging from good food to an excellent beverage to go along with that food, to a great smile and service that you experience in the outlet or by the delivery driver or the person at the window at the drive-through, the cleanliness of not just inside the outlet, but also, as we're experiencing more and more, the cleanliness of the outside of your location as you go up for a curbside pickup or drive-through, and the atmosphere inside as well, and the value of that visit. Each one of those is a lever that you can pull to drive satisfaction. But which one do you focus on for your occasion? Because satisfaction in each one of these pillars, levers influence, is different by occasion. And we've been able to model that within our data to understand by occasion which one is relatively more important or less important. This is an example for lunch alone. And as you can see here, the solid line indicates the level of influence and correlation with driving overall satisfaction within lunch alone for each one of these pillars. And the dotted line shows us the average food service visit. So in lunch alone, it's much more important to focus on value and food to drive satisfaction. You would want to put your available money in those spots and have the other pillars there to help support them. And this plays out uniquely. And I'm going to look at that big level of growth avenues here to show you how each growth avenue influences satisfaction and which of these pillars and these levers have a greater influence on each one of the growth avenues. So when we're looking at the quick breakfast related visit, what we're seeing there is that you really want to focus on cleanliness, which was very interesting to me when we saw this, beverage, and atmosphere. They have an outsized influence on driving overall satisfaction in the quick breakfast. Those are the breakfasts that are really on the road. A lot of them are retail visits or coffee shop and donut visits. The restaurant breakfast, these would be visits to most of our QSR establishments and all of our FSR establishments in the field are really focused on primarily the atmosphere and on value. In the lunch routine, that period that really relied a lot on our data, we relied a lot on our day-to-day lives, really come down to two factors. One, value, because it's so routine, we have to make this attainable. And two, food. You want to have a great experience on a day-to-day basis. In the social lunch period, really focuses on food and atmosphere. The daily dinner options, which make up the lion's share of dinner, are related to food almost exclusively. And the special occasion dinner comes down to influence of both food, yes, but because these, remember, are highly influenced on dining occasions, the atmosphere is keenly important. Something that hopefully in the new normal we'll be able to get back to at some point. And when we're talking about snack breaks and beverage pit stops, they are very unique, in which snack break is really all about the value you're getting for that visit, but on average is very similar to the average overall food service visit. And of course, beverage is all around the beverage itself. And Ariel, I see you're coming in. Do we want to take some questions now?
Yes, I think now may be a good stopping. Oh, can you guys hear me? Okay, perfect. I think now may be a good stopping point because we do have a question. I do want to get it answered, and we do have a 3:30 on the same stage. But
great.
So thank you, of course, so much. You actually did such a great job. We don't have that many questions, but we did get one question from Philip Barr. And the question is, what do you see the outlook being for the sports arenas?
Yeah, it's one of the more difficult ones to project. It's highly influenced by the rate of coronavirus exposure. That's something we've gotten quite frequently from our partners. The outlook that we see from 2021 is going to be pretty severe as compared to other food service and on-premise occasions. And it doesn't look like from outward projections from other of our partners that is something that's likely to come back at least the beginning part of the year. But hopefully, as we get into the second half of 2021, there's some hopeful signs that we'll be at least able to get back into some of those occasions restarting.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I hope that answered your question, Philip. But guys, I hate to say this, we are out of time for this webinar, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to email us and we can get those questions over to Larry. And Larry, of course, if you're okay with it, we'll send them over to you and then you can respond back. So I know some people, have time to process this and then they're like, oh yeah, I have a question. So, but thank you so much for your time, Larry. And I hope you guys all got something out of this. There was a lot of information packed into it. And Larry, do you have any closing statements or anything you want to let everybody know before we hop off?
No, I mean, there's so much here. So if you're one of our Coke partners and you have the full weight of our support to be able to access a lot of more of this information, reach out to your Coca-Cola sales contact or your Coca-Cola marketer that you interact with, and they'll be happy to help you get in contact with more of this information.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Larry, and thank you to all of our attendees. We do have our next session that starts in 12 minutes on this stage, so we will see you guys soon.
All right, take care.
Thank you, guys. Bye.